Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. Joao Fonseca has won his biggest title yet, the 500 in Basel, and Jannik Sinner is repeat champion in Vienna. Plus, Shanghai is upon us, and we will preview the final Masters 1000 of 2025. But first, I want to start with some news. Some news about the show, about the podcast, and it's very good news. I have always tried to deliver, as you know, the most in-depth ATP analysis that can be found on the internet here. And part of that is being at the cutting edge of data and analytics and bringing stats that unveil insights that provide proof for the things we're seeing and even help us find things that we're not seeing on the court. And I've always tried to incorporate that stuff as much as possible, but I have been limited by what's available to me. And I've worked closely with the folks at Tennis Viz, powered by Tennis Data Innovations, the front-facing entity that we all know as Tennis Insights. But in order to get the information that I want to get, I've had to go through an intermediary. The announcement is I have bought into a program called Courtside Advantage, which is, once again, produced by Tennis Viz and powered by TDI Data, the same people behind the Tennis IQ program that the players and the coaches have access to, and Tennis Insights, as you know, through their social media channels. I now have access to that program, so I'm on the platform. I can look for whatever I want. I can do all of the digging and exploring that I want to do. It's open season, so wasn't free, but a no-brainer investment for the show. And thank you to everybody who makes that kind of thing possible. And I'm really excited for how this is going to improve the product that I'm able to deliver here. All right. And that starts today for this episode right here. And I'll get better and better at using the platform. And, if it's ever too much or too numbers heavy, because there is such a thing, I'll be closely monitoring your feedback on all of that. Let's start with Basel. Now, Sinner Zverev was the better match. The analysis of that match is actually going to be longer. It's more complex. But I want to start with Fonseca. It's simpler. It's punchier. Let's just get that out of the way first. And before we get into the match, some big picture stuff. I don't want to do another Fonseca development segment, at least not a super in-depth one. We've done it enough this year. But I will just remind, because it's always good to take stock, that at the start of the year, I felt like Fonseca should end up in the 30-ish range. Thought top 30 for him would be a success. I didn't discount the possibility that he could finish top 20, but I wasn't necessarily expecting it. And I always felt as if he would be around 30 at the end of the year. And that's somebody that's my take on a realistic trajectory for someone who I think is going to be an elite player, a top player. All right, just to be clear. He's 28 live. So he's right in that range now. Things in the bigger picture, and there are always ebbs and flows. I was asked on the mailbag last week, actually, interestingly enough, about Fonseca's recent results, and if they were alarming, if they were concerning. The response was, look, have his results been exciting recently? No. But have they been so bad that something feels off, that things feel as if there's something to be worried about or alarmed with? No. If you zoom out, he's right on track, and he's on a great track. Winning a 500 at 19 years old, not very easy. Since 2009, when the current tour structure was introduced with 1000s, 500s, 250s. It's only been done by somebody younger than Fonseca, who's 19 years old plus 2 months now. It's only been done by somebody younger than that twice, and that is Alcaraz in Rio and in Barcelona in 2022. Carlos was 18 at the time. I also want to point out Fonseca's ELO rating, which takes into account the level of opponent that you are beating and the level of opponent that you are losing to. So if you get tougher draws, Fonseca as an unseeded, I think typically hasn't had great draw luck as of late, but also has had some big wins throughout the year. And ELO rating also kind of builds in more of a recency bias. But at any rate, Fonseca's 19th in ELO, and ELO tends to be predictive for young players. Good young players, usually their actual ranking is slowly catching up with their ELO. The ELO is ahead of the curve. That has been consistently true as far as tracking ELO goes. So that's it for me on big picture Fonseca. Again, I don't think we need to belabor the point that he's doing really well. He's having a great rookie campaign on the ATP Tour, and this is the signature result. And no shock that it comes towards the end of the year because he's just getting better and better. Skipped the Asian swing. That was being questioned by some. Nobody will be questioning it anymore. What was the major improvement this week? Let's introduce the analytics for the first time today. Simple theory. If Fonseca is making his forehand, he is going to be nightmarish. We know what a big, powerful weapon that particular shot is. We know how easily Fonseca is able to access damage off of that wing. But the reason why you wouldn't necessarily call it a fully bloomed elite forehand on par with the likes of Sinner and Alcaraz right now is because could be a bit of a loose cannon. The tour average forehands in percentage is 83%. Your tour average, you're going to make 83% of your forehands. Fonseca's average is 82% over the last 52 weeks, which means he misses more forehands than most. In Basel, over the course of the 4 matches that he played, his forehand in percentage was up at 87%. Speed was down 1 mile per hour, but still huge at an average of 79 miles per hour. Is there a relationship between him dialing back by that small amount, just 1 mile per hour, but sometimes small details can make a difference, and the fact that he made so much more? Maybe, maybe not. I wouldn't feel conclusive in saying that, but I do think, generally speaking, in watching Fonseca, the biggest key for him in keeping the ball in is his intention, his risk profile, his risk management is really the word I would use. Because sometimes he can get caught up in trying to get it all done in one shot. And when Fonseca is at his best, he's hunting for short balls by going into big targets, and he's actually making the winners less spectacular. If Fonseca's playing his best, the winners will be less spectacular because he's earned the short ball. He's earned the prime opportunity to then put away balls inside the court, middle of the court, favorable contact point, on balance. You know, the spectacular winners are going to happen, but obviously on a point in and point out basis, it's a lot better when Fonseca is finding his finishes in combination and he's able to work the point a little bit more. And I've always felt that that would also come not only with the experience of learning how to make better decisions, but also in trusting the legs. And the trust in the legs is going to come from being stronger and being faster, which is the main area where I think Fonseca lags behind his peers. At any rate, I feel pretty confident saying this. If Fonseca's in percentage is going to be 87% on a regular basis, he will be in the top 10 or the top 5 quickly on that number alone, because that's how impactful the forehand would be if he was able to get it in at that clip. I'm pretty confident in that. Davidovich Fokina, now 0-5 in finals. This one, you could say, was less excruciating particularly if you compare it with the De Minaur final in Washington and the Del Rey final against Kecmanovic, where he held championship points in both of those. This one, he was outplayed really from start to finish, but there was, of course, that question, and there will be until Fokina, if he finally lifts a trophy. Still annoyed at how many people just say that it's going to happen as if it's a guarantee. I just disagree with that. But anyway, there's always that question, as long as Fokina has a 0 on the left column of his finals record, of what it's going to feel like mentally. And Fonseca clearly came out relaxed, played a great opening service game. Fokina missed he missed 3 first balls in his opening service game to get broken at love. And that set the tone for the final. ADF played it pretty flatline emotionally. He did have one outburst where he threw his racket, but maybe intentionally, maybe feeling as if he wanted to try a calmer approach. That's always a battle that Davidovich Fokina is fighting. It's, where is my optimal intensity level for me to compete at my best mentally? And it's been a journey for him, because there's emotional roller coaster, the volcano, as his longtime coach, Jorge Aguirre, I believe is his name, used to say, that he's the volcano emotionally. This certainly wasn't that. It just felt kind of low energy, and Fonseca brought a lot of positivity, like he always does. The other thing I'd say, while we're on the mental conversation, Fonseca dealt with a lot of disappointing return games, and he never let anything linger or bleed over into his service games. It is quite remarkable. Final scoreline of this match, 6-3, 6-4. It really could have, arguably should have, been much worse. The fact that it ended up only being 1 break in both the first and the second sets were a result of Davidovich Fokina escaping from difficult positions in his service games consistently, which can be frustrating, which can increase nerves, especially down the stretch of the second set. When you look at Fonseca, for example, losing a championship point or 2 at 5-3 before serving it out at 5-4. There were all these situations in which Fonseca had to deal with disappointment in return games, but that was never a problem for him. So kudos to Joao on that. And with that, let's talk a little more about the technical stuff. You take a teenager who grew up on clay in Joao Fonseca, and you'd assume that the serve and the return are going to take a long time to click. It's true about young players in general. Serve and return tend to kind of come along last, but it's especially true when you are growing up training on clay, for all of the benefits that clay court tennis has. Better for developing footwork, better for developing racket speed, better for developing point construction and variety in some cases, right? Not better for serve and return, that's for sure. But that is really where Fonseca's performance shined in this final. Let's start with the fact that Foki's serve was abused. The depth of Fonseca's returning was absolutely stunning, basically from start to finish. And we can take a look at this graphically for those watching on YouTube. But essentially, we have the court split into 3 zones. We've got a short return, which is inside the service box. We've got a mid-court return, and then we've got a deep return. And the amount of first serve returns, which is what we're looking at right now, that landed in the deep zone, 39%. Fonseca put 39% of his first serve returns within what I would approximate is like the, 5 feet inside the baseline or deeper. And the tour average for this number is 29%. So 10 percentage points higher on that front. Then if we kind of change and look at second return, it's a similar deal in the sense that there's basically just nothing landing in the service box. But what I'd like to quickly point out on this graphic is on the second return, you can be a little bit more thoughtful about which wing you're hitting towards. And in this case, Fonseca went at Fokina's forehand on the second return, which is the shot that is more rushable and in general a lot more brittle than his backhand. So given a choice on the second return, we're going hard at Davidovich Fokina's forehand. When 4 out of 10 returns on your first serve points are basically ending up at your feet, that is a horrible place to be playing from, especially when Fonseca is so deadly when he gets on the front foot, because the way a lot of this ended up looking is great depth on the return means Fokina has to lift almost a half volley on the third shot. He's not able to really hit out on the ball or be effective. And then it's hammer time on the fourth shot for Fonseca. So it's deep ball, force Fokina to lift, and then we attack on the fourth shot. Part of what enabled this, of course, is Fokina's serve ability. Let's do a little comparison here. The left side is Davidovich Fokina, so I just want to start with Fokina serving, and then we'll talk about Fonseca serving in a second. But for ADF, average first serve speed 118. As we know, that's pedestrian, that's below tour average. But it's the first serve accuracy where he's really going to suffer. Tour average is 0.591 meters away from the sideline. Fokina's average is worse than that, 0.677. Obviously, you want a small number, but in this match, it was 0.802 meters from the sideline. Now, if you're anything like me, that doesn't really mean much to you, so I'm just going to do a meters to feet translation, and it's 2.6 feet. So that's an awful number, when you're averaging more than 2.5 feet away from the sideline on the first serves. And then here's a visualization of that. Here's Davidovich Fokina's first serve locations. You can see his wide serves are not going wide. His tee serves are sometimes going tee, but sometimes not. It's just a very, very inconsistent scatter chart by Davidovich Fokina. Now, if we look at Fonseca's serving, really just as impressive as his returning. The numbers are outstanding. And just watching this match, it's like, let me start here. Basel's history as a speedy indoor hard court towards the end of the year, this event has been dominated by servers. Giovanni Pecci-Perricard won last year, winning a final against Ben Shelton. Felix Auger-Aliassime won the 2 years previous. Roger Federer won this event 10 times. Not quite apples to apples, but I'll throw that out there. This is an event where the conditions are going to favor the servers, and you better be able to take advantage. Fonseca, again, a teenage South American player who grew up on clay, he looked every bit a first strike, big serving player. He just did, full stop. It has been remarkable to see how quickly the serve has developed. He's always going to have the big first forehand behind it. If we just isolate Fonseca's service numbers, he averaged 132 miles per hour in this match. Tour average is 120. His average second serve speed is 107. Tour average is 98. And his placement usually does fall a little bit below tour average, but in this final specifically, his accuracy climbed above tour average. And that's just distance. That's average distance to the sidelines. If you want to bring a percentage into the mix, Fonseca made 79% of his first serves. This was the best I've ever seen him serve. Ace rate was 15%. He was timely with his serving as well. I think early on in the match, this was another key moment. Davidovich Fokina nearly broke right back in the first set after going down 2-love. And Fonseca, he came up with probably 4 enormous serves, unreturnables, to get out of a extended deuce game here. If Fokina got that immediate dopamine hit of breaking right back and sort of feeling as if he's more in the match right away, it definitely could have been a difference maker. I mean, I don't think so. I do think that Fonseca was he was so much better in this match that I can't really see one moment shifting the outcome. But it is something to think about, and I think in general, when Fonseca's back was pushed up against the wall, it was pretty clear how much help his serve was giving him on a regular basis. Last thing I want to mention is that he looked a little bit stronger to me on the open stance backhand, which is something that is going to keep getting better. But his technique on the backhand when he's moving to his left and he's sliding open stance, the technique looks really, really good. Like, I think mechanically, his backhand is well constructed to get excellent at hitting that shot, which has become such an important shot, one that, Djokovic and Sinner have been able to leverage extremely well. Alcaraz honestly deserves to be right in there. I mean, his open stance backhand is also terrific. So I think if you're going to be elite, you want that shot at this stage. And for Fonseca, it's just a matter of having the strength and the agility to hit it well. And those things are still getting there. But they're coming along. I do see some progress there. Fonseca did end up with a very healthy 41% steal rate, which is the percent points won on defense. 10 points above tour average, 6 points above his average. So he was able to turn points around against Fokina, extend some rallies into forehand errors in particular. Davidovich Fokina didn't have the most consistent performance off the ground. And that'll just about do it for my Basel analysis. Great match and great run by Joao Fonseca. So moving along now to Sinner versus Zverev in Vienna. I'm going to be a little less numbers heavy in this analysis. And I'm going to start by talking about 2 points. Now, in general, I think it's very unfair to judge a tennis player's performance by 1 or 2 points. And there are hundreds of points played in a match. And although a match outcome can come down to a couple of points, when assessing overall performance, it's not fair to zoom in on 1 or 2 points and have that define or characterize how well a player played. I don't think that's a fair way to analyze tennis. Do you feel a butt coming here? But that's kind of exactly what you do with Zverev at this point. It just is. This was a match in which I think, for the most part, Zverev was playing brave tennis off the ground. He was hitting his forehand big, with conviction. His average speed off the forehand was 80 miles per hour. Guess what? That was quicker than Sinner's. Sinner was at 79, same number that Fonseca hit on average over the course of his Basel run, just to give you an idea. Zverev was up at 80. That's great. But at 5-all, third set, deuce. What's it going to look like? They played a 24-shot rally. Zverev missed a first serve, so had to start the point pretty much on neutral terms. And Sinner hit a backhand down the line winner, which was chef's kiss, spectacular. But Zverev was getting hammered this whole point. And he had maybe 2 or 3 opportunities to take some control. Balls in which he had breathing room, some oxygen to apply some pressure, to turn the tables a bit on Jannik, to put him on the run, to rush him, to be disruptive in some way. He didn't take them. He was passive over the course of a 24-shot rally and was just on his heels the whole time. And eventually, it's Jannik Sinner. Zverev didn't make a mistake in this rally. He didn't play a terribly short ball. But if you're going to play 24 ground strokes back and forth with Jannik Sinner and you don't hurt him when you have opportunities to, Even if you play great defense and you're really, really consistent, it's Jannik Sinner. Zverev probably wins this point against most guys. But it's Sinner, so it's a backhand winner rope down the line. Next point, add out, another second serve. They go backhand to backhand. Zverev actually does attack a ball in this point, one. He went down the line with a hard backhand, but it bled far too middle. It was too central. And Sinner was able to neutralize. Okay, so now they're back into a neutral exchange. It's backhand and backhand again, and Zverev actually makes an unforced error this time. On the 16th shot of the rally, Sinner dropped a ball a little bit shorter, which was actually ended up being effective because it got low out of Zverev's strike zone, and he's kind of decelerated and pushed it long. So Zverev, again, he didn't play badly, but he hit 19 ground strokes over the course of 2 points. 19, and he didn't come up with anything good. He didn't come up with anything disruptive. He attacked one ball. It wasn't a great attack. It was a manageable attack. Remember I told you Zverev out-hit Sinner on the forehand for the match in terms of average speed? I have the ability to then just look at these 2 points, in which I'm not taking a tiny sample size. We're looking at 2 long rallies. We're looking at a 24-shot rally and a 16-shot rally. On these 2 points, Sinner's forehand averaged 88 miles per hour. Zverev, 75. So Zverev went down, Sinner went up. Isn't that kind of the story of what it is in this head-to-head? That when the chips are down in the big moments, Sinner's probably going to hit it harder and not miss. Zverev's probably going to hit it softer and maybe miss, but more likely just kind of get pushed around a little bit. And that's that. And that's why you can judge Zverev by a couple of points, because I don't think he played this match passively. I don't. But I do think he played those points passively. And look, I'm going to be fair here. I'm not just saying, oh, Zverev got dictated and that means he wasn't any good and that means he was trash. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he had opportunities to do something with the ball. There were occasions in which there was a chance for him to try to apply some pressure, and he didn't even try. He just didn't. And that's where I get on him. Okay, let's move on. Zooming out on the match, Zverev did win the first set. His serve was probably the most impactful shot on either side of the net in that opening set. He made 78% of his first serves at 69% effectiveness. Serve effectiveness, meaning it's either an ace, a service winner, or an attacking +1. He benefited from a shaky forehand game from Sinner midway through the first set. Yet, despite Zverev's dominant serving, was still under scoreboard pressure on a pretty regular basis throughout the set, and he managed to serve very, very clutch. Saved several break points and took the opening frame. But in the end, as the match progressed through the second set and the third set, Zverev couldn't really move and ball strike with Sinner in the long run. Zverev's serve effectiveness did dip rather dramatically, not in the second set, but definitely in the third set. He had to play more from neutral, and that was trouble. Great returners, the more serves they see, the better they tend to return. It is something that I'd love for that to be studied a little bit more critically. But that tends to be the commonly held belief in all tennis spheres, because you start to get a read on it, you start to get more used to it, you start to pick up on patterns, you start to pick up maybe on ball toss indications and all of that. And you kind of time the speed and the spin a little bit better. Zverev's first serve average speed did dip, though, in the third set. He was 127 in the first, 127 in the second, and 125 in the third. But his season average is 130, so as a whole, he was below his average. Maybe he's still not 100% with the shoulder. In general, I don't think he's been serving at his very best since the U.S. Open. But that could have given Sinner, 2 miles per hour is significant at the highest level. It can give Sinner just a little bit of that extra millisecond to be more effective on the return, which he was in the third set. All in all, Zverev did not serve badly. Sinner's return didn't dominate Zverev's serve. The only reason it felt significant that the effectiveness dipped is because it was literally the only thing holding Zverev up throughout the opening set. Yes, he was more effective in the baseline exchanges in the first set compared to the second and the third. So I will admit that, but it's not... the main reason he won the first was because his serve carried him. When that stopped happening, it was trouble. So let's get into why. Well, Zverev said at the Australian Open that the only thing that he does better than Jannik is serve. Now, if you were going to argue against that, let's say you were in Zverev's camp and you wanted to strike down that negative thinking and say, Sasha, come on, that's not right. You'd probably go to his backhand. You'd say, are you kidding me? You've got the best backhand in the world, Sasha. What are you talking about? You can go toe-to-toe with that backhand. But that's not how I feel. Strength to strength, and this was vivid in this match. And maybe there would be other matches where Zverev could outplay Sinner on the backhand, because Sasha's two-hander is obviously good enough to maybe do that on occasion. But it certainly didn't happen here in Vienna. Strength to strength, Zverev does not beat Sinner in that backhand to backhand. Sinner is finding that down the line redirect more often, and he is more effective, particularly when it comes to accuracy, when he goes to it. So I think the frequency is up compared to Zverev. I think the accuracy is up compared to Zverev. And overall, in a matchup between two of the biggest two-handers on the tour, guys who, by backhand standards, they nuke the two-handers. Look at the winner count at the end of this match. Sinner hit 10 winners on the backhand. Zverev hit 2. If we're calling that strength to strength, weapon to weapon, it doesn't look very good for Zverev. Because nobody would really put their forehands head to head in the same conversation. Even if Zverev's analytics on the forehand often end up coming out looking pretty good, because he is overall really consistent off of that wing. Very solid. Anyway, where Sinner and Zverev's forehand really can't be compared, because, yeah, maybe you can put it in the same category in terms of consistency, the finishing power on the forehands from the middle of the court, that always feels like a big deal in this matchup. Like when Sinner can wrestle control of a point and hit forehands from the middle of the court, it feels as if from that position, Zverev's in a whole lot of trouble. Whereas when Zverev doesn't have angle to work with, sometimes he gets stuck. Like there's not an easy avenue for him to find avenues to finish on his own terms, because he doesn't have quite the precision attacking off of his forehand from the middle of the court. Same thing on the backhand, where Sinner is so lethal with his inside-out backhand from the middle. I find that Zverev, he often needs a little bit of angle to work with. Like the court has to open up for him a little bit, and that's where he can be at his best attacking off the ground. Sinner just doesn't necessitate that. I mean, sure, if you open up angles for Jannik, he's going to take them. He'll play great out of the corners. I just think he's a lot better from the middle of the court than Zverev. That matters in these rallies. There was a physical wobble from Sinner in set 3. 3-all, 15-all. After the point, Sinner starts limping. And he plays the rest of the game very low percentage. He was looking for easy ways out of the points, and he wasn't very competitive for the rest of that game. So it became a question. Is this going to be like Shanghai? Indoor conditions very different than what he had to contend with against Kriegspor in China. But third set looked like a little crampy cramp. One thing that it certainly did was it focused Sinner's first strike tennis. In Jannik's 3 service games after that little incident, and we continued to see him walk slowly around the court, stretch out in the corner, although it never really got to something that looked blatant and obvious. He was clearly still managing it, but it focused his first strike tennis, and that's something we've seen in the past. If Sinner starts to feel his legs going on him, you get even that much sharper on first serve and on your first ball. He has the ability to turn up the heat, especially on the +1, turn up the heat and be very effective in doing so. I charted every point except I missed one after 3-all, 15-all. And Sinner played 3 service games after that. He only lost 1 point in those 3 service games. I don't think Zverev ever survived past 5 shots on any of the points that Sinner won. Not only was he losing points, he wasn't surviving the serve +1. I think the one time he got to a 5th shot was a Sinner volley winner. That's it. Now, in fairness, there were 4 rallies of 9 shots or more on Zverev's serve. They were all won by Sinner. 2 of them were the points we discussed at the start of this analysis. So Sinner did have enough legs when he needed them down the stretch of the 3rd set to dig in and win some rallies. But it was interesting to see that little physical wobble. Still feels as if there's one way to beat Jannik, it's just to figure out a way to get to the legs. Now let's zoom in. Last topic here, but I'm going to go in more depth on it. Let's zoom in on the Sinner variety. I know we talked about it after he won Beijing, right? Was it Beijing? Yeah, it was Beijing. We talked about it after Beijing. Some people got angry with me. I said that Sinner really didn't play with a lot of variety in Beijing, despite the U.S. Open comments. Some folks were like, "What are you talking about?" The data was on my side. The data supported me. His core shot percentage was up over the course of Beijing, and in this case, the core shot percentage was slightly down, which means the variety score was slightly up. But I want to talk about this final. Context is this. Zverev is one of the opponents who gave Sinner a lot of trouble when Jannik was young. And that's because the pace that Sinner played with wasn't as bothersome to Zverev. Great shock absorber. These were specifically the kinds of matchups that inspired Sinner to work on varying his offense more all throughout 2023. Skill development that ended up paying off big time. Not that he leans on it as frequently as some other players, but when he has to execute these things, he has it in his bag because of all the hard work he put in back then. Now he's trying to, in theory, maybe use that stuff more or make it even better. The data, as I mentioned, is still not showing a huge boost in Sinner's variety. Overall, in the final, his variety score was 14.2%. The tour average is 19.1%. The Vienna average for the tournament was 14.5%, but it was boosted significantly by the Altmaier match. The Altmaier match with which Sinner was like, oh my God, he could barely lose a point. Jannik in that match was actually going into a pretty experimental mode. And, maybe that was something that he may have talked about with his coaches. Like, if you've really got a match in your grasp, that's the best time to really try stuff. And he certainly did in the Altmaier match. But other than that, variety wasn't really up statistically. What I will say is that the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. And the worst part of the data is that it treats every point the same. Jannik Sinner arguably turned this match around with his drop shot. And I would support that argument. That's my argument. He turned this match around with his drop shot at love 1 in the second set. At 30-all, he had a forehand drop shot for a winner. Off of Zverev's slice defense, where he loaded up, looked like he was going to drive it, and just pulled the string. Zverev was not there. Add in another forehand drop shot. Zverev got to this one. He was heavy on the redrop, and Sinner hit a backhand down the line winner to pass Zverev at the net. Very, very easy pass. Add out. This time Sinner backhand drop shot down the line. Zverev dug it out. Not super deep, but Sinner followed it up with a backhand cross-court pass on sort of like a mid-court half-volley pickup that he hit extremely well. And it was not an easy shot, but there was, because Sinner had stepped up inside the court to take time away from Zverev, there was a lot of space to hit the passing shot into. And that's part of the advantage of drop shotting, is if you can step in and take time away behind the drop shot, usually either the lob is open or you've got some open court to hit into. It's very difficult to achieve ideal defensive position or ideal just court coverage, net coverage after retrieving a drop shot, which will often drag you out of position. So that second one, the backhand drop shot followed by the backhand pass cross court, that was Sinner's first break of serve. It was the first break point where Zverev didn't make a first serve. He'd saved 4 out of 4 up until that point. Again, this gave Sinner a 2-love lead in the second set, and from that point on, he was in control. Rob Koenig on commentary said from a secondhand source that Jannik hit a lot of drop shots in warm-ups. Zverev is going to inspire that, from many, many opponents across the tour. Zverev gets drop shotted as much as anybody gets drop shotted because it's in the scouting report. You should drop shot him. We've gone over this many, many times, but you have to have the skills in your bag to take advantage of the matchups. This is part of variety. Part of variety is I have the ability to customize a game plan based on what my opponent likes or doesn't like. Because if the skill development isn't there, a perfect example, serve and volley against Medvedev, right? Everybody knows you can try to serve and volley against Medvedev, and it's a smart decision. If you don't have the serve and volley, you're not gonna be able to do it with success. The only players who were able to do that against Medvedev successfully were the players who are great at serve and volley, period. So this was an example of that. You've got to have the drop shot in the bag. Sinner ended up winning 6 out of 7 drop shot points. Mind you, the first few that he hit were not all very good, but the execution improved with reps. There were some, by the way, that Tennis Insights counted as short slices that I probably would have classified as droppers. So that doesn't end up in the data set. Zverev also, by the way, went 1 for 5 on his drop shot attempts. So if you look at the overall variety score for this match being low for Sinner, which compared to the tour average of 19%, it was only 14.5%. The devil is in the details. Sinner only hit 6 deep slices. That's a tiny number. Only 6 slices. 9 angles. That seems average. 10 net shots. That's really low, especially because Zverev, that includes when you get drop shotted. So essentially, Sinner did not come forward very often in this match. 4 lob/moon balls. That's also pretty low. So all of these numbers are low. You know what wasn't low? 7 drop shots and 8 short slices. And that is the act of actively bringing Zverev forward, actively bringing him in. That's what the matchup dictates, right? That's going to be the essential, I'm playing Alexander Zverev, so this is what I need to do. And that's what Sinner nailed in this match. So I think in terms of the specificity of the variety and how clutch the drop shot in particular came in terms of turning the match around in that one particular game, I think the data in this case undersells the importance of what Sinner was able to do outside of his core power game. So some larger takeaways here. Sinner is now on a 21-match win streak on indoor hardcourt. His last loss indoors came at the year-end championship finals back in 2023. How absurd is that? His path to the final, Bublik, Kaboli, de Minaur. Didn't drop a set. I think that's pretty impressive. For a 500, Bublik, Kaboli, de Minaur, pretty tough. And you're not going to drop a set? Yeah, high marks for that. Another stat I want to share, Sinner's played 10 tournaments this year. He's made 8 finals. He's won 4 titles. Now, that kind of efficiency, that is so good. Usually you do that and you're at number 1, you're player of the year. It speaks to the 2025 season that Alcaraz is having, that, Sinner is going to finish 2025 probably feeling like he was second best, because most of the time that would not be second best. On the Zverev side, want to offer up some context for Sasha as well. He came into this week concerned about the shoulder, unsure if he'd finish the season. Obviously, the shoulder held up, at least to some extent. Speed was down in the final, as I mentioned. Maybe the low expectations coming in helped him psychologically. Keeping it that tight against Sinner, being 5-all in a third set against Jannik, especially on an indoor hard court, it could be a confidence boost, but that's not the sense I got from watching it. I don't think Zverev unlocked a breakthrough here. There just wasn't enough good things happening, in my opinion, in the rallies for him to really feel as if he was knocking on the door there of winning the match, despite the scoreboard. I think the most positive reading for this for Zverev would be, if you can keep it that tight in a best-of-5 match, you can bring endurance into play. And that is still, in my opinion, Zverev's best chance of actually getting a big win over Jannik Sinner, especially in best-of-5 when it counts the most. And that's why I thought it was egregious that Zverev didn't battle a little bit harder in the third set of the Australian Open final this year. He was demoralized. I get it. It's a human reaction. He felt defeated, but really, what somebody needed to tell him in that moment, maybe somebody did tell him and he wasn't ready to hear it, but somebody needed to tell him, you just got to keep dragging this thing out, because if you do, that's how you can win. You've just got to get this match to go longer. Let's get to the Bercy preview, shall we? The conditions are allegedly going to be slower. New court. They are going to La Défense Arena. I hope it's good. I'm a little bit concerned by the fact that it's like, a main court, outer court within the same larger arena with like a black curtain. That tends to look ugly, whatever. I hope it's great. I hope the camera angle is better than the old Paris-Bercy. I think it will be. So, that's one thing I'm looking forward to. Crowds are usually really, really good for this event. So that's fun, especially for the French players. And this time of year, motivation is often a larger factor because so many players are, at this point, mentally and physically exhausted. That can help the French players, of course, because they do want to play well at this event. Last year, we saw Humbert put together the best run of his career. Alcaraz and Sinner have met in the final at the last 5 events they have competed in together. And one more note before the quarter-by-quarter is big withdrawal. The only, I think notable withdrawal among the seeds, at least. Jakub Menchik with a foot injury. Probably ends his season. He kind of slowly lost momentum since Miami. He will finish the season as number 1 in the next-gen race by a lot. But interestingly enough, and I think this makes some sense in terms of what it feels like, his ELO is actually far worse than Tien and Fonseca's. And that's because Miami was a long time ago. And as of late, Menchik just hasn't had many very good wins. All right, here we go. Let us start with Carlos Alcaraz's quarter. Top seeds are Alcaraz, Ruud, Auger-Aliassime, and Lehechka. My dark horse here is Arthur Rinderknecht. My upset alert, Yiji Lehechka. And my early popcorn, Alcaraz versus Nori in round number 2. Rinderknecht, so, again, rolling with a Frenchman here. I buy into the Shanghai run for Rinderknecht a little bit more than Vachereau. And by the way, they're both in this quarter, as I'll get to. My opinion of Rinderknech's level has been really high since he played Sinner at Roland Garros. So while the Shanghai final was obviously unexpected to me, I don't feel as if it fully came out of nowhere. I think he'd been building to that, and I'd been watching him play throughout the second half, thinking, seems like a top 25 level. Serving big, stealing a lot of time, coming in, elite net coverage, great movement at the net. You really have to stay unattackable when you're playing him. You have to get him moving side to side, or you're in big trouble. And obviously that makes things difficult. Rinderknech will play Fabian Marozsan in the first round. And then he'll get the winner of Lehechka and Vachereau in the second round. We could get another Rinderknech-Vachereau second round match. I would say it's not super, super likely, but it is possible. And among the seeds, and you guys know 1 week tournament, 56 player draw, it's a lot harder to hit the upset alerts because there are less seeds to choose from. And in this case, among the 3 seeds here, Lehechka would be my upset alert, taking on Vachereau. Vachereau played Fritz really tight in Basel, gave him a great run for his money. I did watch every point of that match, and I will say I think Taylor was way off. I think that had a lot to do with it. But the one thing that I felt held up for Vachereau from Shanghai is the serving. It really is Zverev-like on serve. The percentage pace combination is so elite. Lehechka does not return all that well. So that might shrink the margins, get Vachereau into tie breaks, and he's playing, fearless, confident tennis right now under pressure for the most part. So can he keep that up? Early popcorn, Alcaraz versus Norrie. They did play at Wimbledon this year, and it was very straightforward for Carlos. No drama whatsoever. But outside of that particular meeting, they've actually played a lot of good matches, which is a credit to Norrie. In fact, Cam has won twice. One of them was somewhat of an Alcaraz injury, but the overall head-to-head is 5-2. My quarterfinal prediction here, Alcaraz defeating FAA. I have been very confident in Felix since his U.S. Open run. He's clearly feeling very healthy, very confident. Indoor conditions helps his precision attacking game. He's got plenty of motivation with the year-end championships. Sometimes that can add some extra pressure, but I think for Felix right now, he's riding a high. And as long as it's not too slow for Felix, which, if it takes away a lot of his serve potency, that's trouble. I don't think it'll be that slow, and I think he'll be just fine. Alcaraz coming off of a couple weeks off. We'll get into him a little bit more as we move forward. He does have a horrible resume in Paris. Not good at all. But I think there are plenty of reasons to suspect that this year might be better. Going to Taylor Fritz's quarter, he's got de Minaur, Khachanov, and Bublik. Dark horse here is Corentin Moutet. Upset alert, Karen Khachanov. And early popcorn, Fonseca versus Shapovalov. That is a first-round match. Another Frenchman in Moutet getting my dark horse nod in this quarter. I've been loving what I've been seeing out of Moutet, who is ranked 91 at the start of the grass court season, is now up to a career high of 36 in the world. He has leaned into his variety even more to my eyes. He's coming in more often, and he's still really consistent elite defender. I just think right now he's keeping opponents even more off balance than he used to, which is not allowing them to sort of settle in to their baseline dictating against Moutet. Because as fast as Corentin is, when he's not playing well, it's because he's just allowing guys to get too comfortable playing attacking tennis on the other side of the net. He gets a qualifier first round. I think they've placed qualifiers, but at the time that I prepped for this preview, qualifiers were not yet placed. So Let me try to see if I can update you on who he's playing. That's going to be the lucky loser, Riley Opelka. Yeah, I actually think that's a nice matchup for Mute, who I think will enjoy defending the serve +1 of Opelka and just forcing him to play some extra balls and getting errors. It would be great to see Mute in the second round play Alexander Bublik. Not only is this the drop shot derby, two of the best and most frequent drop shot practitioners in the world, there's also some bad blood. I called a match between them at the Phoenix Challenger, and they literally almost got into a fist fight. They do not like each other. I don't know if they've since made amends, squashed the beef, but there was beef, so that's something to watch out for. I will mention Terence Ottman is in this quarter. Just want to shout him out here in the dark horse category. I much prefer Mute as a dark horse, but Ottman deserves a mention because of the buzz that surrounds him after the Cincinnati run. He has lost first round 3 out of his last 4 tournaments since Cincinnati, and his best win in that stretch is over Botic van de Zandschulp, so hasn't quite backed up that Cincinnati run as of yet, despite playing another quality match against Jannik Sinner at one point, which I think was in Beijing. My upset alert is Karen Khachanov, who continues to be on a losing streak. I believe I had him upset alert for Shanghai as well. In the 5 matches, his break rate is 11%. That is an incredibly alarming number for Khachanov, especially because he's not exactly playing serve bots here. He is not winning rallies. He is not defending very well. I don't know if it's just the emotional toll of losing from 2-0 up against Kamil Maishruk at the U.S. Open. Has that just taken a chunk out of him? Is he just kind of already in I need vacation and off-season mode because of that? That's possible. He's playing Benjamin Bonzi, who redirects really well off of both wings, takes the ball early, and yeah, I actually think that he's kind of a dangerous matchup for Khachanov because Bonzi is not the best mover, not the most athletic, but the way Khachanov is playing right now, I worry that he's actually not going to force Bonzi to play as much defense as you really have to in order to be successful against the Frenchman. Popcorn matches: Fonseca versus Shapovalov. A lot of big winners, maybe a lot of big errors. It's going to be interesting to see how Fonseca deals with the turnaround. Never easy. And it is an immediate rematch of the semifinal that they played in. As long as Shapovalov turns up, I don't know. I don't think he was injured. Okay. And that's a part of why this is also an early popcorn match, because Shapovalov's retirement in the third set, I think he was down 4-1. That was a suspect retirement. It had hints of rage quit. Maybe that's out of line, okay? I don't know that for a fact. There just wasn't much evident there on the injury front. All right. Quarterfinal prediction here is Bublik over de Minaur. Picking a bit of an upset here, okay? Taylor Fritz and Alex de Minaur, especially on hard courts, they have been so consistent. Second half of the year, they've been shoo-ins. They do not often get upset. But we've got Bublik indoors. The ceiling of his serve is just through the roof. Okay? Pun intended, I suppose. And he's been competing better, especially in rallies. I think Fritz's level has clearly dropped off a bit since Shanghai. It's kind of 2 tournaments in a row where I don't think Taylor has looked himself. So at some point, maybe he picks himself back up. But yeah, I really didn't recognize him in Basel, to be honest. And I think it's kind of maybe time that de Minaur hits a bit of a wall. He took 1 week off after Shanghai, but other than that, it's been every week since the U.S. Open. Deep run at the U.S. Open, and then Davis Cup, Laver Cup, Tokyo or Beijing. I think Beijing, but I'm a little fuzzy. And then Shanghai, and then he had his week off, and then last week he played, and he's been going deep at all of these tournaments. So it's been a lot for de Minaur, And I think it might be time for the fatigue bug to catch him. Bublik takes advantage. Number 3 seed is Alexander Zverev. He's got Musetti, Medvedev, and Davidovich Fokina. My dark horse here is Jaume Munar. My upset alert is Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, and my early popcorn, Dimitrov versus Giovanni Pecci-Pericard, first round. Munar, he's been a frequent dark horse pick on Monday Match Analysis throughout the year for a reason. Against top 20 opponents in 2025, he is 7-7. His previous record was 8-35. His ability to punch up against the best is way up. That is because he's holding serve way more. The improvement for Munar is entirely in his serve game. His return numbers are identical to where they've been the last several years, but his hold rate has gone up from 75% to 82%, which is as big an improvement as I have seen out of anybody on the tour this year. The serve itself is better. He's more comfortable flattening out the forehand. He's always been a very competent volleyer, but he's just finding his way in more often. Why is he finding his way in more often? Because he's serving better and hitting better forehands. He plays Medvedev first round. He crushed Medvedev last time they played in Miami. That won't happen again. Medvedev's playing far better now, but it's one to watch. If Munar gets through Medvedev, look out, because he could go on a real run. My upset alert, Davidovich Fokina, very hard to put together back-to-back weeks this time of year. And I just think there's going to be too much emotional tax from the final. I know in February he did make back-to-back finals. He bounced back from that heartbreaker against Kecmanovic, which not a lot of people would have backed him to do. But this is a different story. There's been cumulative toll. It wasn't the most convincing run, honestly, last week in Basel, where he got a couple of retirements late in the tournament. And in the big picture, his form was not very good. So I'm just not quite sold on the state of Davidovich Fokina right now. But it's going to be very interesting. He plays Hugo Humbert, who is your defending runner-up after such a magical run in Bercy last year. But he did come up with this injury. So, is Humbert going to be healthy? Because it would be a real shame if he couldn't be at his best for this, especially because the wrist injury that he suffered this season has clearly put a dent in his results. He's not been great. He's just started to look more like himself recently. I don't love the ranking pressure he's under this week either, but I still think if he's right, he'll beat Davidovich Fokina at this venue. And popcorn match, Dimitrov against Pecci-Pericard. Very simple. Grigor is back. Welcome back, Grigor. We are all very, very happy to see Dimitrov back at it. And honestly, he's come back sooner than I expected, no doubt. It will probably benefit Dimitrov that he's getting some matches in before he hits the offseason so that it just doesn't feel quite as foreign to him come Australia next year. Quarterfinal prediction here, I'm going to go with Medvedev defeats Zverev. This has been head-to-head ownership, Medvedev over Zverev on a massive winning streak against Sasha. So that part is simple. It's really just about, do you have faith in Medvedev to avoid upset and to reach the quarterfinal? Do you even feel that Zverev is going to be able to accomplish that? And I do think I back both of them. Zverev's serve is still so strong indoors. Of course, he's the defending champion here. It's a new venue. It's slower. Zverev, I don't even know with him in conditions. I don't know what's better for him, what's worse for him. The only thing that I think is really germane is how high the ball is bouncing. And the higher, the better for Zverev. But other than that, I know Sasha says he likes quick conditions. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Medvedev trending up, looking a lot more like himself. And I'm going to back him here to continue this sort of end-of-year resurgence somewhat. I mean, right, to the extent in which it's possible to have a resurgence at the end of the year, because that's not really going to be the thing that is going to shift any narratives when it comes to Daniil Medvedev. I mean, maybe if he won this tournament, right, and now he's a 1,000 champion again, that could change the conversation. But ultimately, it's still like, he was terrible at the majors this year. Can he show up in Australia next year and make another slam semifinal? Like, those are the kinds of things where you can start to warrant or phraseology like Medvedev is back. Okay, anything at this time of year, I think it's a little bit premature, but certainly I think his level has been strong. Happy to put him in the semis here. Jannik Sinner's quarter. Sinner, Shelton, and Rublev are the only seeds. Jakub Menchik with a late withdrawal here, and they didn't replace his seeding. So they just put an unseeded player in his place. Dark horse here is Lerner Tien. Upset alert is Ben Shelton. And early popcorn would be Kaboli versus Mahach first round. Lerner, again, I think another repeat pick from Shanghai. The serving in this quarter is not very good as a whole, is what I'd point out for Tien. There's nobody who's really going to be able to take Lerner out of a baseline contest here. And on hard court, Tien is the 10th best baseline points win percentage player on tour. He is 10th in baseline points won on hard court in the last 52 weeks, winning 54.3%. Plays Nuno Borges first, plays Andre Rublev second. Upset alert, Ben Shelton. Nothing good since the shoulder injury at the U.S. Open. 3 matches, 2 losses. The one win was in a third set tiebreak over Maishruk. I've said this before. I see him as a confidence and momentum player. I see him as upset prone when he's not at his best. And this is a tough spot for him draw-wise. He'll get a bye, and then he'll play Mahach or Kaboli off of a win. 2 players with very high peaks when they get momentum. Kaboli, in particular, has had success against Shelton in the past. Popcorn. Is that Kaboli-Mahach match? Explosivity off the charts. Elite movement on both sides of the net. Kaboli has the better forehand. Mahach has the better backhand. And that should be a great rumble. I believe it's actually coming up at 3 a.m. my time, which is literally in 4 hours from the time I'm recording this match. So, unfortunately, most people listening to this podcast will not be changing their plans in order to watch Kaboli-Mahach. But that's okay. Still deserving of the title. Quarterfinal prediction here. Let's go Sinner over Tien. Won't belabor the point. 21 match win streak indoors for Jannik Sinner. And I think he got a good draw here. Final weekend. Alcaraz over Bublik. Sinner over Medvedev. Alcaraz over Sinner. I'm going to skip over the semifinals and go straight to the final. As far as the Alcaraz-Sinner rivalry is concerned, first off, I've been looking for opportunities to not pick them both to the final, because at a certain point, this streak is going to end. Right now, it's 5 in a row when they're both in the same draw making the final. I tried to say, oh, it's Paris. Funky things have happened historically at this tournament. Alcaraz has a terrible resume at this event. Sinner might be tired. I just can't get there, guys. I just can't get there. Especially indoors, where the conditions are favorable physically, and it's going to be a little bit slower, which I think makes it harder for players to upset these guys. I couldn't do it. So we're back to Alcaraz-Sinner. Usually I have made my predictions in this rivalry based on conditions. Sometimes that has worked. Sometimes that has not worked. Traditionally, if it's an indoor hard court, given their resumes, very clear who I will be picking. Sinner. Sinner over Alcaraz on an indoor hard court, especially when there's a good amount of speed there. But I'm going to go against that this time and just pick the moment a little bit more. I just think right now, this is an Alcaraz moment. This is an Alcaraz moment in time where he is the better player. Not by such a substantial margin that I would be surprised if Sinner won, but as a whole, like big picture, since the start of the clay court season, he has been the best in the world. And if the conditions have slowed down here, and he's well rested and not rusty, and he's had like a good run up, good training, he's kind of politician to me, you know? because I wasn't going to back Alcaraz here because of the Paris history. And I don't know, 2 weeks off, maybe a little bit of a letdown spot. But the way he was speaking in the press conference, I just feel like it bugs him a little bit that he hasn't done well here, and he's looking to change it. And I think the high-octane attacking style can obviously translate indoors, especially with the way he's been serving. Sinner's been serving better as well. But, yeah, I'm going with Alcaraz because 2025, second half of 2025 right now, that's an Alcaraz time period. That's how I'm going to play it this time. Let's see what happens. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.